The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers as Jennifer's voice cut through the garage air like a rusty blade. I was under our beat-up Honda, trying to fix the transmission leak that had been draining our bank account one drop at a time, when her phone conversation drifted through the open window above my makeshift workspace. "Oh my God, Lisa, you should see him right now." Jennifer's voice carried that particular tone she reserved for her girl squad, equal parts mockery and disgust. "He's literally covered in motor oil, lying under that piece of junk car like some kind of caveman mechanic. I swear, sometimes I wonder what I was thinking when I married him." I froze beneath the Honda, my heart hammering against my ribs. The speaker was on, which meant her entire crew was listening to this character assassination. "Tommy thinks he's so handy," Jennifer continued, and I could practically hear her rolling her eyes. "But honestly, he couldn't fix a relationship if it came with an instruction manual. And don't even get me started on his performance in other areas, if you know what I mean." Cruel laughter erupted from the phone. Lisa, Amanda, and Rebecca, her holy trinity of enablers, cackling like hyenas over my apparent inadequacies. "Girl, you deserve so much better," Lisa's voice crackled through the speaker. "That would be Lisa Chen. No, wait, Lisa Morrison now, the spa owner who'd reinvented herself after her divorce settlement. Someone with actual ambition, you know, someone who can provide the lifestyle you deserve." Speaking of which, Jennifer's voice dropped to what she probably thought was a whisper. "Richard and I have been talking about that weekend getaway. The one I told you about? He's booking us the penthouse suite at that resort upstate, 5-star everything." My wrench clattered to the concrete floor. Richard, her boss at the PR firm. The slick, silver-haired charmer who drove a BMW and wore suits that cost more than I made in a month. The same Richard who'd been finding excuses to keep Jennifer working late, taking her to client dinners and sending her expensive flowers from the office. "Tommy still doesn't suspect anything, does he?" Amanda's voice joined the conversation. Amanda Walsh, the lawyer who'd helped Jennifer's sister through her messy divorce. Apparently, she was now consulting on my wife's extracurricular activities. "Please," Jennifer scoffed. "He's too busy playing with his computers and pretending he's still some tough guy from his boxing days. The man hasn't thrown a real punch in 15 years, but he still acts like he's some kind of fighter. It's actually pathetic." More laughter. More casual cruelty delivered with the efficiency of a surgical strike. "Besides," Jennifer continued, "I've been documenting everything. His drinking, his mood swings, his complete inability to provide for us properly. When the time comes to make this official, I'll have everything I need to take him for everything he's worth, which granted isn't much, but still." I lay there in the growing darkness beneath the car, listening to my wife of 12 years dissect our marriage like a biology experiment. Every shared memory, every intimate moment, every vulnerability I'd ever shown her, all of it weaponized and served up for her friends' entertainment. "You're brilliant," Rebecca chimed in. Rebecca Torres, the influencer wannabe who documented every meal, every outfit, every mundane moment of her life for her modest following of suburban housewives. Getting all that evidence while you're exploring your options with Richard. It's like having your cake and eating it too. "Exactly," Jennifer said. "And the best part? Tommy's so clueless, he actually thinks I'm going on a girls' trip this weekend. He even offered to pay for part of it. Can you imagine? Funding his own humiliation." The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, each word driving deeper into whatever was left of my respect for the woman I'd married. They discussed logistics, how Jennifer would sneak away, what lies she'd tell, how they'd cover for her if I got suspicious. It was a masterclass in deception, orchestrated by 4 women who'd apparently turned betrayal into a team sport. When Jennifer finally hung up, I remained under the car for another 20 minutes, staring at the oil-stained concrete and processing what I'd just heard. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. Instead, I felt something cold and calculating settling into my chest, like ice water flowing through my veins. I'd been underestimated before. Back in my boxing days, opponents would look at my average height and unassuming build and assume I'd be an easy target. They learned otherwise when they woke up on the canvas, wondering what truck had hit them. The secret wasn't size or strength, it was patience, observation, and the ability to wait for exactly the right moment to strike. Jennifer thought she was playing chess while I was stuck playing checkers. She had no idea I'd been watching her moves for months, cataloging the late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the sudden interest in expensive lingerie that never made an appearance in our bedroom. I'd been gathering evidence of my own, not for some future legal battle, but because something deep in my gut had been screaming that the woman I'd married was slowly transforming into someone I didn't recognize. Now I knew why. I slid out from under the Honda and walked into our house, a modest 2-story brownstone in the kind of neighborhood where people still knew their neighbors' names and borrowed cups of sugar. Jennifer was in the kitchen, preparing what looked like an elaborate dinner. She'd changed into one of her good dresses, the navy blue one that hugged her curves in all the right places. Her dark hair was styled, her makeup perfect. She looked beautiful, successful, and completely comfortable with the lies that had apparently become her second language. "Hey, honey," she said without looking up from the stove. "How's the car coming along?" "Making progress," I replied, washing the grease from my hands at the kitchen sink. "Should have it running smooth by tomorrow." "That's great." Her tone was bright, cheerful, and utterly fake. "Listen, I wanted to talk to you about this weekend. The girls and I are planning that spa retreat I mentioned. Lisa found this amazing place about 3 hours upstate. Very exclusive, very relaxing." I nodded, drying my hands on the dish towel. "Sounds expensive." "Well, we all deserve to treat ourselves once in a while, don't we?" She turned to face me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or fear that I might actually put up some resistance to her plans. "Of course," I said. "You work hard. You should enjoy yourself." The relief on her face was almost comical. "Really, you don't mind?" "Jennifer, I want you to be happy. If spending a weekend with your friends makes you happy, then I'm all for it." She smiled then, the kind of radiant smile that had made me fall in love with her all those years ago. The same smile she was probably practicing for Richard's benefit. "You're the best husband ever," she said, standing on her tiptoes to kiss my cheek. "I don't deserve you." Finally, something we could agree on. That night, after Jennifer had gone to bed early, claiming she needed her beauty sleep for the spa weekend, I sat in my home office and opened my laptop. The room was small, cramped with computer equipment and boxing memorabilia from my amateur days. Jennifer called it my man cave, usually with the same tone she'd used to describe a toddler's playroom. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. But this cramped little space was where I'd built my second career after hanging up my boxing gloves. Information technology might not be as glamorous as throwing punches, but it had taught me valuable skills that Jennifer had apparently forgotten I possessed. Network security, data recovery, digital forensics, all tools that could be remarkably useful when your wife thought she was smarter than you. I'd been monitoring our shared accounts for weeks, watching money disappear in small increments that Jennifer thought I wouldn't notice. Designer clothes purchased during lunch breaks, expensive dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together, hotel charges that didn't match any business trips she'd mentioned. The financial infidelity had been happening long before the physical betrayal. Each transaction another small betrayal of the partnership we'd supposedly built together. But tonight, I wasn't interested in financial records. Tonight, I was planning something that would make Jennifer's carefully orchestrated weekend getaway memorable for all the wrong reasons. The first step was simple. I transferred our joint savings into an account she didn't have access to. Not stealing, the money was half mine anyway, and I had every intention of using it to secure my own future rather than funding her affair. Next, I canceled the credit cards she'd been using for her secret purchases. Let Richard pick up the tab for his own romantic weekend. Then came the more creative elements of my plan. Jennifer had always been careless with her passwords, using the same combination of our anniversary date and her maiden name for everything from social media to email accounts. It took me less than 5 minutes to access her phone records, her text messages, and her email correspondence with Richard. What I found there was even more damaging than the conversation I'd overheard earlier. Months of explicit planning, detailed discussions of how they'd handle my inevitable discovery of their affair, screenshots of text messages where Jennifer mocked everything from my appearance to my performance as a husband, plans to manipulate me into a divorce settlement that would leave me with nothing while she rode off into the sunset with her wealthy new boyfriend. But the most revealing discovery was a group chat between Jennifer and her 3 friends titled Operation Upgrade. In it, they'd been strategizing for months about how Jennifer could transition from her current life to a more luxurious existence with Richard. Lisa had contributed legal advice about asset protection. Amanda had provided recommendations for private investigators who could dig up dirt on me if needed. Rebecca had been documenting Jennifer's suffering in our marriage, creating a social media narrative that painted her as a long-suffering wife trapped with an inadequate husband. They'd been planning this for 6 months, 6 months of lies, manipulation, and careful orchestration, all designed to destroy me while making Jennifer look like the victim. I printed everything. Every text message, every email, every social media post. The evidence filled a manila folder 2 inches thick. Then I made copies and stored them in 3 different locations, including a safety deposit box Jennifer didn't know about. By the time I finished, it was nearly 3 in the morning. Jennifer was sleeping peacefully upstairs, probably dreaming about her romantic weekend with Richard. She had no idea that her carefully constructed plan was about to collapse around her like a house of cards in a hurricane. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat back in my desk chair, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal spread across my computer screen. Most men in my situation would be devastated, broken by the revelation that their marriage was nothing more than an elaborate lie. But I wasn't most men. I was a fighter, and fighters don't stay down when they get hit. They get back up, they adapt, and they find a way to win. Jennifer wanted to play games? Fine. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated her opponent. In boxing, that kind of arrogance usually resulted in a quick trip to the canvas. In marriage, apparently, it resulted in something far more satisfying. I was going to enjoy watching her discover just how wrong she'd been about me. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything seem sharper, more defined. I'd been awake since 5, moving through the house like a ghost, gathering the last of my important belongings and securing them in my storage unit across town. Jennifer slept through it all, exhausted from her late-night phone session with Richard, where they'd finalized their romantic weekend plans in whispered conversations she thought I couldn't hear. By the time she stumbled downstairs in her silk robe, I was sitting at the kitchen table with coffee and toast, looking like the same oblivious husband she'd been manipulating for months. "Morning, beautiful," I said, not looking up from my newspaper. "Ready for your spa weekend?" She stretched dramatically, putting on a show of reluctant exhaustion. "Oh, you know how these girls' trips are. I'm already tired just thinking about all the relaxation I'll have to endure." The performance was impressive, I had to admit. If I hadn't heard her real plans, I might have actually believed her reluctance was genuine. "What time are you leaving?" I asked. "Lisa's picking me up around noon. We're meeting Amanda and Rebecca at the spa for check-in at 3. She poured herself coffee and added the expensive vanilla creamer she'd started buying recently, another small luxury that Richard had probably introduced her to. "I'll probably be back Sunday evening, depending on traffic." "Take your time," I said. "I've got plenty to keep me busy here." That much was true, though my weekend plans were considerably different from what Jennifer imagined. She disappeared upstairs to pack, and I could hear her moving around the bedroom, humming softly to herself. She was happy, excited about her romantic getaway. The guilt that might have bothered her conscience a few months ago had apparently been replaced by anticipation and greed. At 11:30, I heard Lisa's car pull into our driveway. Lisa Morrison, the spa owner who'd reinvented herself as Jennifer's chief enabler and strategic advisor. Through the window, I watched her step out of her white Mercedes, another post-divorce upgrade funded by her ex-husband's construction business. She was dressed in expensive athleisure wear, her blonde hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail that probably cost more to maintain than most people's car payments. Jennifer appeared at the top of the stairs with her weekend bag, a new leather piece I'd never seen before. Another gift from Richard, no doubt. "Tommy, Lisa's here," she called down. "I'll come say hello," I replied, following her to the front door. Lisa greeted me with the kind of bright, fake smile she'd perfected during her years as a real estate agent before her spa venture. "Tommy, how are you, sweetie?" "Can't complain," I said. "Thanks for organizing this weekend for Jennifer. She's been working so hard lately, she really needs the break." "Oh, we're going to take such good care of her," Lisa said, and I caught the brief glance she exchanged with Jennifer. "Girls' weekends are so important for maintaining friendships, don't you think?" "Absolutely," I agreed. "Sometimes you need to get away from your regular routine to really appreciate what you have." Jennifer kissed my cheek goodbye, her lips lingering just long enough to maintain the illusion of marital affection. "I'll call you tonight to let you know we arrived safely." "Drive carefully," I said, waving as they backed out of the driveway. I stood in the doorway until their car disappeared around the corner, maintaining the role of the devoted husband seeing his wife off on her innocent girls' trip. Then I closed the door, walked back to my office, and began implementing the plan I'd been refining for the past 18 hours. The first phase was simple but effective. I called Jennifer's office and spoke to the weekend receptionist, explaining that my wife had left her work laptop at home and asking if someone could swing by to pick it up. The receptionist, a young woman named Katie who'd always been friendly during office parties, was happy to help. "Actually," I added, "Jennifer mentioned she might have left some important files on her personal computer too. Would it be possible for someone from IT to take a look? I'd hate for her to miss anything important while she's away." Katie assured me that someone would be by within the hour. Perfect. When the IT technician arrived, a skinny kid named Dave, who looked like he'd rather be playing video games than making house calls, I explained the situation. Jennifer had been working on a major client presentation before leaving for her spa weekend, and she was worried she might have saved some files in the wrong location. "No problem," Dave said, setting up his equipment. "I'll just run a quick scan and see what's what." What Dave found, of course, was exactly what I'd planted for him to discover. Jennifer's computer, which she'd carelessly left logged into all her personal accounts, contained a treasure trove of information that painted a very different picture of her weekend plans. Email confirmations for a luxury resort suite booked under Richard's name, text message conversations discussing their affair in explicit detail, photos she'd been sending to Richard that definitely weren't appropriate for a married woman. Mr. Patterson," Dave said, his face flushing red as he stared at the screen. "I think you need to see this." I played my part perfectly, the shocked husband discovering his wife's betrayal through the innocent efforts of a work-related computer search. Dave, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, offered to delete the evidence and pretend he'd never seen it. "No," I said, my voice carefully controlled. "I need copies of everything. Can you help me with that?" By 3 o'clock, I had official documentation of Jennifer's affair, complete with timestamps and digital signatures that would hold up in any legal proceeding. More importantly, I had everything I needed to begin the next phase of my plan. I called Amanda Walsh's law office. Amanda had been Jennifer's friend since college, and she'd been instrumental in planning this whole charade. But she was also a practicing attorney with a reputation to maintain, and I was betting that reputation was more important to her than her loyalty to Jennifer's scheme. "Amanda, it's Tommy Patterson," I said when she answered her personal line. "I need to schedule an appointment. It's about Jennifer." There was a pause. "Tommy, is everything okay?" "I've discovered some things about my wife that I think you should know about. Things that might affect your professional relationship with her." Another pause, longer this time. "What kind of things?" "The kind that could get you in trouble with the Bar Association if you're providing legal advice to help her commit fraud." The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. When Amanda finally spoke, her voice was carefully neutral. "I can see you Monday morning at 9. "I'll be there," I said. "And Amanda, you might want to think carefully about what Jennifer's really been asking you to help her with, because I don't think it's as innocent as she's made it seem." I hung up before she could respond, leaving her to spend the weekend wondering exactly how much I knew about her involvement in Jennifer's plans. Next, I called Rebecca Torres. Rebecca was the weakest link in Jennifer's support network, a social media addict who craved attention and validation more than she valued loyalty or discretion. She was also the most likely to crack under pressure, especially if that pressure threatened her carefully curated online image. "Tommy," she answered on the second ring, her voice bright with fake enthusiasm. "How are you? Jennifer told me you were being so supportive about her spa weekend." "Actually, Rebecca, that's why I'm calling. I wanted to thank you for being such a good friend to Jennifer during this difficult time." "Difficult time?" She sounded genuinely confused. "With her affair," I said casually. "I know it must be hard for you, keeping her secrets and helping her cover up her relationship with Richard. That's real friendship." The silence was deafening. I could practically hear Rebecca's brain trying to process what I just said and figure out how to respond. "Tommy, I don't know what you're talking about," she finally managed, but her voice was shaking. "Of course you don't," I said. "Just like you don't know about the group chat where you've all been planning this for months, or the photos Jennifer's been sending to Richard, or the fake evidence you've been helping her create to make me look like a bad husband." I have to go," Rebecca stammered. "Sure," I said. "But Rebecca, you might want to think about what happens to your influencer career when people find out you've been helping a married woman cheat on her husband. Your followers probably wouldn't approve of that kind of content." I hung up, confident that Rebecca would be calling Jennifer within the hour, panicking about what I might know and what I might do with that information. The final call was the most important one. Richard Blackwood, Jennifer's boss and lover, was a man who'd built his career on image management and reputation protection. His PR firm handled crisis communications for major corporations, which meant he understood better than most how quickly a scandal could destroy everything he'd worked to build. I didn't call him directly. Instead, I called his office and left a message with his weekend answering service. "This is Tommy Patterson," I said. "Please tell Mr. Blackwood that I have some information about his current relationship with my wife that I think he'll find very interesting. I'll be at Murphy's Bar on 5th Street tonight at 8 o'clock if he'd like to discuss it in person. If he doesn't show up, I'll assume he's not interested in keeping this matter private." Murphy's was the kind of blue-collar neighborhood bar where I'd spent countless hours after boxing practice, back when I was young and stupid enough to think I could make a living with my fists. It was also the kind of place where a man like Richard Blackwood would stand out like a diamond in a coal mine, exactly the sort of uncomfortable, unfamiliar environment that would put him at a psychological disadvantage. By 6 o'clock, my phone was ringing constantly. Jennifer, calling from her romantic getaway to demand explanations for the chaos that was apparently erupting around her. Rebecca, crying and begging me not to ruin her social media career. Amanda, trying to schedule an emergency meeting to discuss damage control. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I took a long shower, put on my best jeans and the leather jacket I'd worn during my boxing days, and headed to Murphy's to wait for Richard. The bar was exactly as I remembered it. Dim lighting, scarred wooden tables, and the kind of clientele that settled disputes with fists rather than lawyers. I ordered a beer and claimed a corner booth where I could watch the door. Richard arrived at exactly 8 o'clock, looking like a man walking into enemy territory. His expensive suit was out of place among the construction workers and mechanics who made up Murphy's regular crowd, and his nervous glances around the room told me he was already regretting his decision to meet me here. I raised my beer bottle in greeting, and he reluctantly approached my table. "Patterson?" he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "I got your message." "Richard," I replied. "Thanks for coming. Can I buy you a drink?" He glanced around the bar with obvious distaste. "I don't think they serve anything I'd recognize here." "Probably not," I agreed. "This isn't really your kind of place, is it? More blue-collar than you're used to?" "What do you want?" he asked, cutting straight to the point. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a manila envelope, placing it on the table between us. "I want to show you something interesting." Richard stared at the envelope like it might explode. "What is it?" "Photos," I said. "Text messages, email conversations, financial records, everything documenting your affair with my wife, going back 6 months. His face went pale. "I don't know what you think you know, but I know everything, Richard. I know about the hotel reservations. I know about the money you've been spending on her. I know about the weekend you're supposed to be enjoying right now, while I sit at home like the clueless husband you both think I am." I opened the envelope and spread some of the evidence across the table. Photos of them together at restaurants I couldn't afford, screenshots of text messages where Jennifer described in detail what she wanted to do to him, financial records showing money transfers from his account to hers. Richard's hands were shaking as he looked through the evidence. "What do you want?" he asked again, his voice barely above a whisper. "I want you to understand something," I said, leaning forward. "You think you're smarter than me because you wear expensive suits and drive a fancy car and make more money in a month than I make in a year. You think Jennifer married beneath herself, and you're doing her a favor by offering her an upgrade." I paused to take a sip of my beer, letting the silence stretch between us. "But here's what you don't understand, Richard. I've been watching you for months. I know about your gambling debts. I know about the client money you've been borrowing to fund your lifestyle. I know about the cocaine habit you think nobody's noticed. And I know about the other women you've been seeing behind Jennifer's back." The color drained completely from his face. "You're bluffing." I reached into the envelope and pulled out another set of photos. Richard with a redhead I didn't recognize, entering a hotel that wasn't the one where he was supposed to be spending the weekend with my wife. "Am I?" I asked. Richard stared at the photos, his breathing shallow and rapid. "What do you want?" he asked for the third time. "I want you to disappear," I said simply. "I want you to end whatever this is with Jennifer, transfer her to a different department, and pretend none of this ever happened. Because if you don't, I'm going to destroy you." "You can't." "I can," I interrupted. "I will, and I'll enjoy every minute of it." I stood up, leaving the evidence scattered across the table. "You've got until Monday morning to make your choice, Richard. End it with Jennifer, or watch your whole world come crashing down around you." I walked out of Murphy's without looking back, leaving Richard sitting alone in the dim bar, surrounded by evidence of his own stupidity and staring into the ruins of his carefully constructed life. The weekend was just getting started. Saturday morning brought the kind of phone call that made the previous day's efforts worthwhile. Jennifer's voice was shrill with panic, cutting through the peaceful silence of my coffee and newspaper routine like a fire alarm. "Tommy, what the hell is going on?" she demanded before I could even say hello. "Rebecca called me crying last night, saying you accused her of helping me have an affair. Amanda's refusing to take my calls. And Richard," her voice caught, "Richard says he can't see me anymore because of some conversation you two had." I took a slow sip of coffee, savoring both the rich flavor and the desperation in my wife's voice. "Good morning to you too, Jennifer. How's the spa weekend going?" "Don't play games with me," she snapped. "I know you did something. Rebecca said you threatened her career, and Amanda's acting like I have some kind of contagious disease. What did you tell them?" "I told them the truth," I said simply. "About your affair with Richard, about the group chat where you've been planning to destroy our marriage. about the lies you've been telling and the money you've been spending on your little romance. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly 30 seconds. When Jennifer finally spoke, her voice was different, colder, more calculating. The mask of the devoted wife was finally slipping. "You've been spying on me," she said. "I've been paying attention," I corrected. "There's a difference. You got careless, Jennifer, sloppy. Did you really think I wouldn't notice the credit card charges? The late nights? The way you've been treating me like an obstacle instead of a husband?" "I want a divorce," she said, her voice flat and hard. "I know you do," I replied. "You've wanted one for months. The question is whether you're going to get the kind of divorce you've been planning or the kind you actually deserve." "What's that supposed to mean?" I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our quiet neighborhood street. Mrs. Henderson from next door was walking her ancient beagle, the same routine she'd followed for the past decade. Normal people living normal lives, dealing with normal problems. Unlike my wife, who'd apparently decided that normal wasn't good enough for her. "It means I know about Operation Upgrade," I said. "I know about the evidence you've been manufacturing to make me look like a bad husband. I know about the financial planning you've been doing with Lisa and Amanda. And I know about your plan to take me for everything I'm worth while you ride off into the sunset with Richard." Another long silence. "I also know," I continued, "that Richard has been seeing other women behind your back, including a redhead named Michelle who works at the marketing firm downtown. Did he mention her during your romantic weekend planning sessions?" The sound Jennifer made was somewhere between a gasp and a growl. "You're lying." "Am I? Why don't you ask him?" "Oh, wait. You can't because he's not taking your calls anymore. Funny how quickly a man's priorities can change when his whole life is threatened, isn't it?" "You bastard," she hissed. "You think you're so smart, but you have no idea what you've done. I'll take you for everything in the divorce. I'll make sure you end up with nothing." "With what evidence?" I asked. "The fake documentation you've been creating with your friend's help? The manufactured complaints about my behavior? The fictional financial irresponsibility you've been trying to pin on me?" I walked back to the kitchen table and sat down, spreading out some of the evidence I'd collected over the past few months. Bank statements, credit card records, phone logs, all the real documentation of Jennifer's actual behavior. "See, here's the thing about evidence, Jennifer. It has to be true to be useful. And the truth is that you're the one who's been financially irresponsible. You're the one who's been lying and cheating and manipulating. You're the one who's been planning to destroy our marriage for your own selfish gain." "I hate you," she said, her voice breaking with rage and frustration. "I know," I replied. "You've made that pretty clear. The question is what you're going to do about it now that your carefully laid plans have fallen apart." She hung up without another word, leaving me alone with my coffee and the satisfaction of knowing that Jennifer's perfect weekend was turning into the disaster she deserved. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The next call came from Lisa Morrison, and her tone was considerably different from Jennifer's rage. Lisa sounded scared. "Tommy, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "Do we?" I asked. "I thought you were busy running your spa weekend." "Cut the crap," she snapped. "Jennifer told me what you said to her, about Operation Upgrade and the group chat and everything else. I don't know how you found out about our conversations, but we need to figure out how to handle this." "Handle what, Lisa? The fact that you've been helping my wife plan to destroy me? Or the fact that you've been stupid enough to leave a digital trail of evidence that could ruin your own reputation?" "I was just being a good friend." "You were being an accessory to fraud," I interrupted. "Jennifer's been manufacturing evidence to use against me in divorce proceedings, and you've been helping her do it. That's conspiracy, Lisa. That's a felony." The silence stretched long enough for me to wonder if she'd hung up. "What do you want?" she finally asked. "I want you to stop," I said. "I want you to tell Jennifer that you can't help her anymore, and I want you to stay out of my marriage. Do that, and I'll consider keeping your involvement in this mess private." "And if I don't?" "Then I'll make sure everyone in town knows exactly what kind of business you really run. How do you think your spa clients would feel if they knew you were using their gossip sessions to help destroy marriages? How do you think your investors would react if they found out their money was funding a conspiracy to commit fraud?" Lisa hung up without another word, but I knew she'd gotten the message. By the end of the day, Jennifer would find herself without her chief strategist and enabler. The third call came from Amanda Walsh, and she was all business. "I'm withdrawing as Jennifer's legal counsel," she said without preamble. "Effective immediately." "Smart choice," I replied. "This conversation never happened," she continued. "I was never involved in any planning or strategy sessions, and I never provided advice about anything other than general legal questions." "Of course not," I agreed. You're far too professional to get involved in something as unethical as helping someone manufacture evidence for divorce proceedings." "Exactly," she said, and I could hear the relief in her voice. "I'm glad we understand each other." "We do," I confirmed. "And Amanda? You might want to be more careful about the kind of clients you take on in the future. Not everyone is as understanding as I am." By Saturday evening, Jennifer's support network had completely collapsed. Her friends had abandoned her, her lover had disappeared, and her carefully constructed plan was in ruins. But I still wasn't satisfied. Jennifer had spent months humiliating me, mocking me to her friends, and treating our marriage like a joke. She'd planned to destroy me financially and socially while painting herself as the victim of an inadequate husband. She'd wanted to make me the punchline of her story. Now it was time to show her what a real punchline looked like. I spent Saturday evening making a different kind of phone call, not to threaten or intimidate, but to inform. I called Jennifer's parents, her sister, her coworkers, and several mutual friends we'd known for years. I didn't lie or exaggerate. I simply told them the truth about what Jennifer had been doing, backed up with evidence that couldn't be disputed. The conversation with Jennifer's mother was particularly satisfying. "Mrs. Chen," I said when she answered the phone, "this is Tommy. I wanted to let you know that Jennifer and I are getting divorced." "Oh, Tommy," she said, her voice immediately sympathetic. "I'm so sorry to hear that. What happened?" "Jennifer's been having an affair with her boss for the past 6 months," I said simply. "She's been planning to leave me for him while trying to take everything we've built together. I thought you should know the truth before she tries to spin this as my fault." The silence was profound. "Are you sure?" Mrs. Chen finally asked, though her tone suggested she already believed me. "I have evidence," I said. "Photos, text messages, financial records, everything. Jennifer's been living a double life, and I'm tired of pretending I don't know about it." I don't know what to say," she admitted. "This doesn't sound like the Jennifer I raised." "Maybe it isn't," I agreed. "Or maybe this is who she's always been, and we just didn't want to see it." By Sunday morning, Jennifer's phone was probably ringing nonstop with calls from family members and friends demanding explanations. Her perfect weekend getaway had turned into a nightmare of damage control and desperate justification. But I still had one more surprise for her. I spent Sunday afternoon at the storage unit where I'd been keeping my most important belongings, loading everything into a rented truck. Then I drove to a small apartment I'd rented across town, a modest one-bedroom place that was clean, comfortable, and completely unknown to Jennifer. When I was finished moving, I called Jennifer one last time. "Your weekend's almost over," I said when she answered. "I thought you should know that when you get home, you'll find some changes." "What kind of changes?" she asked, her voice tight with exhaustion and stress. "I've moved out," I said, "completely. I've also canceled our joint credit cards, transferred my half of our savings to my own account, and filed for divorce. The papers are on the kitchen table." "You can't do that," she protested. "Half of everything is mine." "Half of what we built together is yours," I agreed. "But you'll find that's considerably less than you thought it would be, especially after your spending spree over the past 6 months. Turns out luxury hotels and expensive gifts add up pretty quickly." "I'll fight you," she said. "I'll take you for everything." "With what lawyer?" I asked. "Amanda won't represent you anymore, remember? And with what evidence? All those fake documents you created with your friend's help? Good luck explaining those to a judge." I paused, letting the reality of her situation sink in. "You wanted to make me the punchline of your story, Jennifer. You wanted to humiliate me and destroy me while you upgraded to a better life. But you forgot something important. The best punchlines are the ones nobody sees coming." I hung up and turned off my phone, settling into my new apartment with a beer and a sense of satisfaction I hadn't felt in months. Jennifer would be home soon, returning from her disastrous weekend to find her marriage over, her support network gone, and her carefully laid plans in ruins. She'd wanted to play games with my life. Now she could live with the consequences of losing. The real punchline, though, was still to come. Monday morning brought the kind of autumn rain that makes everything look gray and miserable, which seemed appropriate for what I had planned. I'd spent Sunday night in my new apartment, ignoring the constant buzzing of my phone as Jennifer tried desperately to reach me from whatever hotel room she'd ended up in after her weekend collapsed. By Monday morning, the calls had stopped, replaced by a series of increasingly frantic text messages that painted a clear picture of just how thoroughly her world had fallen apart. "Tommy, we need to talk. This is insane. Richard won't take my calls. What did you do to him?" "My mother called crying." "How could you tell her those lies?" "I'm coming to the house. We're going to fix this." "Where are you?" I deleted them all without responding and headed to Murphy's bar, where I'd arranged to meet Jake Murphy, the owner and my old boxing coach. Jake was one of the few people who'd known me before I became the domesticated husband Jennifer had grown to despise, back when I was hungry and dangerous and willing to fight anyone who looked at me wrong. Jake was waiting in the same corner booth where I'd confronted Richard 2 nights earlier, nursing a cup of coffee that was probably strong enough to strip paint. He looked exactly the same as he had 15 years ago, gray hair, scarred knuckles, and eyes that had seen too much of the world's ugliness to be surprised by anything. "Tommy," he said as I slid into the booth across from him, "you look like hell." "Feel worse," I admitted, "but I'm handling it." "I heard," he said. "Word gets around in a neighborhood like this. Your wife's been making quite a scene, driving around looking for you, calling everyone she can think of to find out where you went." "She's persistent," I agreed. "Always has been." Jake studied my face with the kind of attention he used to pay to my opponents before a fight, looking for weaknesses and tells. "You sure you want to do this, kid? Sometimes it's better to just walk away clean." "I tried walking away," I said. "She wouldn't let me." "Jennifer wants a war, Jake. She's been planning one for months, trying to destroy me piece by piece while she set herself up with someone else. I'm just giving her what she asked for." "And what happens when it's over?" I shrugged. "Then it's over, one way or another." Jake nodded slowly. "What do you need from me?" "I need you to make some phone calls," I said, sliding a piece of paper across the table. "Everyone on that list. Tell them there's going to be a show at the community center tonight at 8 o'clock. Tell them it's about Jennifer Patterson and her friends, and they won't want to miss it." Jake looked at the list. Names of neighbors, co-workers, mutual friends, and local business owners who'd known both Jennifer and me for years. People who'd watched our marriage from the outside and probably had opinions about which one of us was really to blame for its failure. "You're going public with this," Jake observed. "Jennifer made it public when she started telling everyone what a loser I am," I replied. "I'm just making sure they get to hear the whole story." "This could get ugly, Tommy." "It's already ugly," I said. "I'm just deciding who gets to control the narrative." That afternoon, I spent several hours at the community center, setting up for what would either be the most satisfying evening of my life or a complete disaster that would destroy what was left of my reputation. I rented the main hall, set up a projector and screen, and arranged chairs for about 50 people. Then I went home, to the house Jennifer and I had shared for 12 years, to wait for her. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in her car in the driveway like she was afraid to go inside alone. When she saw my truck, she got out and marched toward me with the kind of determined fury that had probably served her well in her PR career. "We need to talk," she said, blocking my path to the front door. "Do we?" I asked. "I thought you'd said everything you needed to say in your group chat with your friends." "That's not fair," she protested. "Those were private conversations." "Nothing's private when you're stupid enough to leave your computer logged into everything," I replied, pushing past her to unlock the front door. She followed me inside, and I could see her taking inventory of everything I'd removed from the house. The boxing trophies from the mantel, the computer equipment from my office, the photographs that included me. I'd been thorough, leaving behind only the furniture and belongings that were clearly hers. "You can't just disappear," she said. "We're married. We have obligations to each other." "What obligations?" I asked. "The obligation to be faithful? You broke that one. The obligation to be honest? You've been lying to me for months. The obligation to support each other? You've been planning to destroy me." I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, taking my time and letting her stew in the silence. Jennifer had always hated being ignored, and I could see her frustration building as I refused to engage with her drama. "I made mistakes," she finally said, her voice softer now, more vulnerable. "I know I hurt you, but we can fix this, Tommy. We can go to counseling, work through our problems, start over." I turned to look at her, really look at her, for the first time in months. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. But there was something different in her eyes now, something calculating and desperate that hadn't been there when we were young and stupid and thought love could conquer anything. "You don't want to fix this," I said. "You want to manage the damage. There's a difference." "That's not true?" "It is true," I interrupted. "You're not sorry you had an affair, Jennifer. You're not sorry you lied to me or planned to destroy me or treated our marriage like a business transaction. You're sorry you got caught." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to decide which approach would be most effective. The vulnerable wife seeking forgiveness, the angry woman demanding her rights, the calculating strategist looking for an advantage. "What do you want?" she finally asked, her voice flat and businesslike. "I want you to come with me tonight," I said. "There's something I want to show you." "What kind of something?" "A presentation," I said. About our marriage, your affair, and the lies you've been telling about me. I think you'll find it educational." Her face went pale. "Tommy, you can't—" "I can," I said, "and I will. The question is whether you want to be there to defend yourself, or whether you want to let everyone draw their own conclusions based on the evidence." "What evidence?" I smiled, the kind of cold smile I used to give opponents right before I knocked them out. "All of it, Jennifer. Every text message, every email, every lie you've told, and every plan you've made, your whole Operation Upgrade laid out for everyone to see." She sank into one of the kitchen chairs, her hands shaking. "You're destroying both of us." "I'm destroying the lies," I corrected. "If that destroys us in the process, then maybe we deserved to be destroyed." At 7:30, I left the house with Jennifer following behind me in her own car. She'd tried several more times to talk me out of my plan, offering everything from couples therapy to an uncontested divorce that would give me more than I was legally entitled to. But I was past the point of negotiation. Jennifer had spent months treating me like a joke, planning to humiliate me while she moved on to what she considered a better life. Tonight, I was going to show her what real humiliation felt like. The community center parking lot was fuller than I'd expected. Jake had done his job well, and word had apparently spread beyond the people on my original list. I recognized neighbors, co-workers, friends, and even some people I hadn't seen in years, the kind of crowd that gathered when they sensed drama and wanted to be part of the story. Inside, the hall was buzzing with conversation and speculation. People were taking seats, checking their phones, and casting curious glances at Jennifer and me as we entered. I could see some of Jennifer's remaining friends clustered together near the back, looking like they wanted to be anywhere else. I walked to the front of the room and turned on the projector, displaying the first slide of my presentation, "The Truth About Jennifer Patterson." The room went quiet. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the hall. "I know this is unusual, but I wanted to make sure everyone heard the real story about my marriage before the rumors and gossip get out of hand." I clicked to the next slide, which showed a timeline of Jennifer's affair with Richard, complete with dates, locations, and photographic evidence. "For the past 6 months," I continued, "my wife has been having an affair with her boss while planning to divorce me and take everything we've built together. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is how she's been planning to do it." I clicked through slide after slide, displaying the group chat conversations, the manufactured evidence, the financial manipulation, and the elaborate lies Jennifer and her friends had constructed to make me look like an inadequate husband. The room was absolutely silent now, everyone transfixed by the evidence of betrayal and manipulation playing out on the screen. I could see Jennifer sinking lower in her seat with each new revelation, her face flushed with shame and anger. "Jennifer wanted everyone to know what a loser she married," I said, displaying some of the more cruel text messages where she'd mocked everything from my appearance to my career to my performance as a husband. "She wanted you all to feel sorry for her, trapped with someone so pathetic and inadequate." I paused, looking directly at Jennifer. "Well, now you know the truth," I said. "You can decide for yourselves who deserves your sympathy." The presentation continued for another 20 minutes, laying out every detail of Jennifer's deception with the thoroughness of a prosecutor making a case to a jury. By the time I finished, several people had left, unable to stomach any more revelations. Others were staring at Jennifer with expressions ranging from disgust to pity. Jennifer herself had stopped trying to maintain any dignity. She was crying now, her carefully constructed image crumbling in front of everyone she'd wanted to impress. "Any questions?" I asked the room. The silence stretched for nearly a minute before Mrs. Henderson, our elderly neighbor, stood up. "Jennifer," she said, her voice shaking with emotion, "how could you do this to Tommy? He's been nothing but kind to you, and this is how you repay him?" More voices joined in, a chorus of disbelief and condemnation that grew louder and more angry with each passing moment. Jennifer tried to respond, to defend herself or explain her actions, but her words were drowned out by the crowd's reaction. Finally, she gave up and ran from the room, leaving me alone with the consequences of her choices. I turned off the projector and began packing up my equipment, ignoring the people who wanted to talk to me, to offer sympathy or ask questions or share their own opinions about what they just witnessed. I'd said everything I needed to say. Outside, the parking lot was chaos. Jennifer was sitting in her car, crying hysterically while several of her former friends tried to talk to her through the window. Others were standing in small groups, rehashing what they'd just seen and speculating about what would happen next. I loaded my equipment into my truck and drove home to my new apartment, leaving Jennifer to face the wreckage of her reputation alone. It was over. The marriage, the lies, the elaborate game she'd been playing with my life, all of it was finished. Jennifer had wanted to make me the punchline of her story, but in the end, she'd become the punchline of her own. The next morning, I filed for divorce on grounds of adultery, backed by evidence that couldn't be disputed or explained away. Jennifer would get her divorce, but not the kind she'd planned. Instead of walking away with half of everything we'd built together, she'd be lucky to get anything at all. She'd played a game she thought she couldn't lose, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail. In any game, there's always someone smarter, someone more patient, someone more willing to do whatever it takes to win. This time, that someone was me. And the punchline? Jennifer never saw it coming. 3 weeks after the community center presentation, I was sitting in my new apartment, enjoying my morning coffee and reading the newspaper, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Jennifer's number, which surprised me. We hadn't spoken since that night, communicating only through lawyers as our divorce proceedings moved forward with brutal efficiency. "Tommy," she said when I answered, her voice hoarse and defeated. "We need to talk." "Do we?" I asked, not bothering to hide my indifference. I thought our lawyers were handling everything. "Please," she said, and I could hear her crying. "Just give me 5 minutes. I'm outside your apartment building." I looked out my window and saw her car parked on the street below, Jennifer sitting behind the wheel like she'd been there for hours. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, and even from 3 stories up, I could see that she'd been crying. 5 minutes, I said, and hung up. When I opened my apartment door, Jennifer looked even worse up close. The confident, polished woman who'd been planning to upgrade her life had been replaced by someone who looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red and swollen, her makeup smeared, and her hands were shaking. "Thank you," she said, stepping into my apartment and looking around at my new life. It was sparse, but comfortable, a place where I could start over without the weight of our shared history dragging me down. "You look awful," I observed, not unkindly, but without sympathy either. "I feel worse," she admitted, sinking into my couch like her legs couldn't support her anymore. "Tommy, I need you to call off your lawyer. This divorce is destroying me." "It's supposed to," I replied, sitting in the chair across from her. "That was the point." "I've lost everything," she continued, her voice breaking. "My job, my friends, my reputation. Richard fired me the day after your presentation. Amanda and Rebecca won't return my calls. Even Lisa is pretending she doesn't know me." "Consequences," I said simply. "You made choices, Jennifer. These are the results." "I know I hurt you," she said, leaning forward desperately. "I know I made terrible mistakes. But this punishment doesn't fit the crime. You're ruining my entire life over one affair." I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "One affair? Jennifer, you spent 6 months systematically planning to destroy me while you built a new life with another man. You manufactured evidence to use against me in court. You convinced your friends to help you commit fraud. You turned our marriage into a joke and me into the punchline." "I was confused," she protested. "I was unhappy, and I made bad decisions, but I never meant for it to go this far." "You meant for it to go exactly this far," I corrected. "The only thing you didn't plan for was getting caught." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to find some angle, some approach that might work. The vulnerable act wasn't having any effect, so she switched tactics. "Fine," she said, her voice hardening. "You want to play hardball? I can do that too. I'll fight this divorce, Tommy. I'll drag it out for years if I have to. I'll make sure it costs you everything you have." "With what money?" I asked. "You're unemployed, remember? And with what lawyer? Amanda dropped you, and no other attorney in town will touch your case after what everyone saw at the community center." Her face crumpled again. "I can't afford a lawyer. I can't afford anything. The house is in foreclosure because I can't make the mortgage payments without your income. My credit cards are maxed out. I'm living in a motel room and eating fast food because it's all I can afford." "Sounds familiar," I said. "That's about where I would have ended up if your plan had worked." "So what? This is revenge? You're going to watch me lose everything just to make yourself feel better?" I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the street where normal people were going about their normal lives, dealing with normal problems, people who didn't spend their time plotting against the people they claimed to love. "This isn't revenge, Jennifer," I said without turning around. "This is justice. You tried to destroy me, and instead you destroyed yourself. I didn't make you have an affair. I didn't make you lie to me for months. I didn't make you plan to take everything I'd worked for while painting me as the villain." "I was going to give you half of everything," she protested weakly. "You were going to give me half of what was left after you'd spent months bleeding our accounts dry for your affair," I corrected. "Half of nothing is still nothing, Jennifer." I turned back to face her, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. She looked so small and broken. Nothing like the confident woman who'd been mocking me to her friends just a few weeks ago. Almost. "Your 5 minutes are up," I said. She stood slowly, like an old woman with arthritis. "Tommy, please, I'm begging you. I'll do anything to make this right." "There's nothing to make right," I replied. "Our marriage is over. It was over the moment you decided Richard was a better option than me. Everything that's happened since then has just been the paperwork." She walked to the door, then turned back one last time. "I did love you, you know, in the beginning." "I know," I said, "but you loved the idea of something better more." After she left, I sat back down with my coffee and newspaper, trying to return to the peaceful morning routine I'd been building in my new life. But Jennifer's visit had stirred up feelings I'd been trying to bury. Not sympathy for her situation, but a kind of hollow satisfaction that felt less rewarding than I'd expected. The truth was, watching Jennifer's life fall apart wasn't making me feel better about mine. It was just confirming what I'd already known, that the woman I'd married had been replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone who'd been willing to destroy everything we'd built together for the promise of something she thought was better. 2 days later, I got a call from my lawyer. "She's agreed to everything," he said without preamble. "No contest, no demands, no negotiations. She'll sign whatever papers you want her to sign." "Everything?" I asked. "The house, the savings, the retirement accounts, even her car. She's walking away with nothing but her personal belongings and whatever debt she's accumulated on her own." I should have felt victorious. This was everything I'd wanted when I started my campaign against Jennifer's deception. Total victory, complete vindication, and the satisfaction of watching someone who tried to destroy me get exactly what they deserved. Instead, I felt empty. "Set up the signing," I said. The divorce was finalized on a gray Thursday morning in November, in a sterile conference room that smelled like industrial carpet and broken dreams. Jennifer sat across from me at a long table, flanked by a court-appointed attorney who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She'd cleaned herself up for the occasion, but she still looked like a shadow of her former self. We signed papers in silence, the only sound the scratching of pens and the rustle of legal documents. When it was over, Jennifer was no longer my wife, and I was no longer her husband. We were just two strangers who'd once shared a life and now shared nothing but regret. "That's it," my lawyer said, gathering up the paperwork. "You're officially divorced." Jennifer stood without looking at me and walked toward the door. Just before she reached it, she turned back. "I hope you're happy," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I hope you find whatever it was you were looking for," I replied. She left without another word, and I never saw her again. 6 months later, I was sitting in Murphy's bar with Jake, celebrating my 40th birthday with a beer and a burger. The neighborhood looked the same as it always had, but everything felt different. I had a new job with better pay, a comfortable apartment, and the kind of peace that comes from not having to wonder what lies your spouse is telling behind your back. "Any regrets?" Jake asked, raising his beer bottle in a toast. I thought about it for a moment, considering the question seriously. Did I regret exposing Jennifer's affair? Did I regret destroying her reputation and her plans? Did I regret the nuclear option that had ended our marriage in the most public and humiliating way possible? "No," I said finally. "She made her choices. I just made sure everyone knew what they were. And Jennifer? You ever hear what happened to her?" I'd heard rumors, of course. Small towns are terrible at keeping secrets, and Jennifer's story had become the kind of cautionary tale that people whispered about at coffee shops and grocery stores. She'd left town shortly after our divorce, supposedly moving back in with her parents in another state. Richard had also disappeared, his PR firm closing quietly after several clients decided they didn't want to be associated with the scandal. "She's gone," I said. "That's all that matters." Jake nodded and took another sip of his beer. "You know what the funny thing is?" "What?" "She thought she was so smart, playing all those games and making all those plans, but in the end, the smartest thing she could have done was just tell you the truth from the beginning." "The truth?" I laughed. "The truth was that she didn't love me anymore and wanted to be with someone else. If she'd just said that, we could have gotten divorced like adults and both moved on with our lives." "But that wouldn't have gotten her everything she wanted," Jake pointed out. "She wanted the new man and the old money. She wanted to have her cake and eat it too. Instead, she ended up with nothing," I said. "And you ended up with everything." I looked around Murphy's bar, at the familiar faces and worn furniture and the life I'd built for myself in the ruins of my marriage. It wasn't the life I'd planned when I was young and stupid and thought love could conquer anything, but it was honest, and it was mine, and nobody could take it away from me with lies and manipulation. "Yeah," I said, raising my beer bottle to meet Jake's toast. "I guess I did." Outside, the autumn rain was starting again. washing the streets clean and preparing the world for whatever came next. I finished my beer, said goodbye to Jake, and walked home to my apartment, where no one was waiting to lie to me or mock me or plan my destruction. Jennifer had wanted to make me the punchline of her story. Instead, she'd become the punchline of her own. And the best part? She'd written every word of it herself. The game was over, and I'd won. Not because I was smarter or stronger or better than her, but because I'd been willing to fight for the truth while she'd been content to live with lies. In the end, that had made all the difference.